The first themed booster pack is out in Pokemon TCG Pocket Mythical Island. It's a smaller set with less than 70 cards, but there are some really impactful cards in the game. And today, I wanted to take some time to run through some of the best of them and talk about the gameplay possibilities that are now in the mix thanks to the new cards in the set. I'm Jet from InThirdPerson.com. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and let's talk about what I think are the best cards in Mythical Island. The highlight of the set is Mew EX. It's a basic Psychic type Pokemon with 130 HP, and its genome hacking attack is Meta Warping. For 3 colorless energy, it lets you copy one of your opponent's active Pokemon's attacks and use it as Mew EX's attack. The big deal here is that you can copy Charizard's attack and Mewtwo's attack and blast both of those in one hit, which is especially relevant in decks that otherwise don't have the firepower to take out Mewtwo and Charizard in one hit. Yes, you could put a Mew EX in a Mewtwo deck, and that's going to make the best deck in the game even better, but for 3 colorless energy, this is a card that you can tech into many other decks in the game and give yourself a one-hit KO option against 2 of the most popular and most meta-relevant decks in the game. Its Psyshot attack is not bad either, similar to Zapdos. For 1 psychic energy, well, for 1 energy, you get to do 20 damage. Nice little poke there as well. But genome hacking is phenomenal, and there are going to be a lot of decks that will tech a 1-of Mew in there to deal with some of those bigger meta threats. Besides being an offensive powerhouse, it also gets support from Budding Expeditioner, where you get to put your Mew EX in the active spot into your hand. So we basically got Koga for Mew EX. Not only is it a great offensive attacker, but you get to use it as a walling Pokemon and scoop it before it gets KO'd with Budding Expeditioner, making it an amazing card on offense and defense. Superior is going to completely change how we look at grass Pokemon. It's a stage 2 with the ability Jungle Totem, where each grass energy will count as 2 grass energy, doubling the amount of energy you've got in play. And yes, the immediate thought is we're going to use this now to get Venusaur EX online. Now you only need 2 energy attached to use its 4 energy attack for 100 damage. But Superior's best new partner is actually Celebi EX. This is a new card from the set. It's a basic grass type Pokemon with 130 HP, and it has the attack Powerful Bloom, where for 1 grass and 1 colorless energy, you flip a coin for each energy attached to this Pokemon, and you do 50 damage for each heads. Now, flipping 2 coins for potentially 100 damage it's okay, but when you've got Superior in play, that 2 energy now becomes 4 coins, where you can hit up to 200 damage, potentially 1-hit KOing anything in the game. But getting 3 energy on here, and that's not too hard to do either, now you're flipping 6 coins with Superior in play. You could potentially hit for up to 300 damage, but when things all net out, you're probably 1-hit KOing a lot of stuff in the game, or at least doing devastating damage to some of the biggest HP Pokemon in the game. I think Celebi with Superior is going to be an awesome combo, and I'm looking forward to trying this deck out for myself. Execute could be a sneaky good card here. Its Growth Spurt attack for 1 colorless energy lets you attach a grass energy to the Execute. Now, if you are playing a non-grass deck, you could tech Execute in there, but I think the big use for this attack is for helping to build up the new Executor. It's got 130 HP, and for 1 grass and 3 colorless does 80 damage, plus 20 more damage for each energy attached to your opponent's active Pokemon. Depending on the deck, you could be getting 1-hit KOs on EX Pokemon with this, and you could make the attack cost even lower with Superior in play, and getting the extra energy from Execute is going to help as well. Dhelmise on its own seems pretty bad. Energy Whip for 1 grass energy does 20 damage, and if it has at least 3 extra energy attached, this attack does 70 more damage. But with Superior in play, 2 attachments now becomes that 4th energy, and now you can swing for 90 damage. I'm not sure this is going to be better than, say, Kangaskhan, where at least you can get that attacking and doing decent damage without having a stage 2 in play, but Dhelmise is at least a more interesting attacker because Superior is in the mix. I love this Vaporeon card. Its ability, Washout, lets you move a water energy from one of your benched water Pokemon to an active water Pokemon. And I love the synergy here with Articuno and Starmie, where you could start with Starmie, swing for 90 damage, and then once the Starmie gets hit, you can retreat to the bench, bring in an Articuno or something like that, and now move that energy off of the Starmie with Vaporeon to a fresh attacker. And you do that a couple of times and just win the war of attrition, doing big damage without your opponent being able to KO anything. And this actually has a new potential attacker here in Gyrados EX. It's a stage 1 with a whopping 180 HP, and this attack for 3 water and a colorless does 140 damage, and you discard a random energy from among the energy attached to all Pokemon. Yes, there will be times you discard your own energy, but 140 damage is going to be a lot to one-hit KO most of the meta Pokemon here. Maybe with a Giovanni, you are then knocking out Mewtwo EX. And 4 energy is a lot. You do have Misty if you want to directly charge up the Gyarados, but I love the idea of powering up an Articuno or a Starmie and then using Vaporeon to move that energy onto Gyarados when it's ready, making this a much more realistic attacker in the end game in particular, because Gyarados having that strong of an attack with this much HP and having ways of setting up that energy now with the Vaporeon makes this ridiculous. Pidgeot EX could be cool. It's a stage 2 with 170 HP, and for 3 colorless energy, Scattering Cyclone does 80 damage and 20 more damage for each of your opponent's bench Pokemon. So you could cap out at about 140 damage, which is a pretty good number depending on how many Pokemon your opponent has on the bench, and this could potentially combo well with the other Pidgeot, the non-EX version that forces your opponent to gust out their active Pokemon with something else, giving you potentially easier KOs with this Pidgeot EX. I'm not sure if that combo is going to be viable enough, but I'm very curious to try this out. Pidgeot also gets some support from Pokemon Flute, where you get to put a basic Pokemon from your opponent's discard pile onto their bench, and this forces them to put something on their bench. You could potentially bench lock them with stuff that they don't want, putting easier targets on the bench, and also just once they have more Pokemon on the bench, Pidgeot EX is now doing more damage. There are probably other uses for Pokemon Flute outside of Pidgeot EX, but the synergy with Pidgeot EX and Pokemon Flute is very clear. Ponyta from Mythical Island, I think, is mostly a straight-up upgrade from the one in Genetic Apex. This one has the attack Stomp, where for 1 fire energy, you do 10 damage, and you flip a coin. If heads, this attack does 30 more damage. Yes, sometimes you're going to do 10 less damage than the other one, which is a guaranteed 20, but there will be times you will hit heads and do 40 damage, and I think the chances of doing 40 is going to be better than a consistent 20. So Ponyta, I think, is just going to replace this one, is going to replace the other one from Genetic Apex in every Blaine Box deck. Rapidash has that coin flip mechanic like the new Ponyta, but I don't like this one nearly as much. Rising Lunge does 40 damage, and if you hit heads, you now do 100 damage, and that sounds cool, but 2 energy attachments on this Rapidash feels not so great. Maybe if you combo this with the Moltres and you flip coins and you've got a whole bunch of energy, this could be kind of better, but in the context of a Blaine Box deck, I kind of like the other Rapidash better, where you can do decent damage with a single attachment. But this could find its way in the meta. Maybe you run a split of the 2 Rapidashes. I don't know, but this could have potential, even if it's not my favorite on the surface. I think Magmar is a straight up upgrade in Mythical Island from Genetic Apex. This one does 80 damage, plus you discard 2 fire energy from this Pokemon. If you combo this with Blaine, you are now doing 110 damage, and that is an incredibly beefy attacker. And discarding the energy does suck, so you'll probably want to use this in a way where it's your end game attacker, or you know it's going to get knocked out on the following turn, so it's not that big of a deal if this gets KO'd, but I really love the damage output on this one. I'm not entirely sold on Aerodactyl EX, but its ability is very cool, where whether it's in the active or in the bench, your opponent can't play any Pokemon from their hand to evolve their active Pokemon. Right now, this doesn't feel as impactful because for the most part, evolution Pokemon are evolving on the bench like a Gardevoir or a Charizard, but there will be times where your opponent doesn't have the option of evolving on the bench, or maybe you're playing against a deck like a Machamp or something like that where you kind of want to evolve in the active, and you will slow that stuff down. So Primeval Law, depending on where the meta goes, this could be even more impactful than it is right now. And its attack, Land Crush, for a fighting and a colorless does 80 damage. I think that's a pretty solid amount. Marshadow's a cool fighting attacker where its revenge attack does 40 damage, plus if one of your Pokemon was knocked out on the previous turn, you're doing another 60. So 2 energy for 100 damage is really nice for a basic Pokemon. Raichu from Mythical Island isn't a straight up upgrade from Raichu in Genetic Apex, but it has some pretty cool uses when I really thought about it. Giga Shock does 60 damage for 3 lightning energy, and this attack also does 20 damage to each of your opponent's bench Pokemon. The snipe damage is really nice there. 60 to the active doesn't seem that great, but I do love the fact that Raichu here has 120 HP versus 100 HP on the Raichu in Genetic Apex, which means most decks are not going to one-hit KO Raichu more often than not, so you potentially have 2 kicks at the can at this Giga Shock attack. At that point, you are two-shotting a Pikachu, you're getting 40 bench damage, and that could be enough to swing the game in your favor. Golem is going to be tough to build up. Yes, you do have Brock, but this still requires 4 energy, but if you can get it built up, it seems very cool where you're doing 120 damage and you're taking 30 less damage from attacks on the following turn. You're dealing out huge amounts of damage with 120. You were one-hit KOing Pikachu before you even account for weakness, but then also taking 30 less damage while you're also a 160 HP single prize Pokemon makes this, like, at the very least, very tantalizing to want to experiment with. Coughing is pretty much a straight up upgrade over the one from Genetic Apex. This one has the attack division where for 1 dark energy, you get to put 1 random Coughing from your deck onto your bench. And yes, you're not doing any damage like the other one, but setting up a second Coughing is huge, giving you a lot more opportunities to set up a true Koga loop where you can Koga away the Wheezing off of the active and then straight up evolve into a fresh one right away. So I think that this Coughing will replace the old one going forward. The new Wheezing isn't a straight up upgrade from the old one, but it does give players some interesting deck building options. This one attacks for 2 energy, but it does 50 damage, and during your opponent's next turn, if the defending Pokemon tries to use an attack, your opponent flips a coin, and if tails, that attack doesn't happen. And so being able to play a little more of a defensive game by actually stuffing attacks rather than tanking hits could be awesome, especially because you're doing a little more damage, even if it does mean you have to attach another energy. I think it's going to take some time before we figure out which is the better Wheezing, but I do think this is one to at least consider. Scolipede is a stage 2, but I do like the fact that it has the attack Venoshock, where for only 2 energy, 1 dark and a colorless does 70 damage, and if your opponent's active Pokemon is poison, this attack does 50 more damage. You can combo this with the old Wheezing that adds poison to your opponent's active Pokemon, and while that big Wheezing is tanking hits or you're Koga looping here and there, you can build this Scolipede in the background and give yourself an opportunity to take a big KO later on. Chatot is Mythical Island's equivalent of Meowth, which doesn't see as much play as it did before, but I do like what Chatot can bring to a number of decks. For 1 colorless energy, Mimic lets you shuffle your hand into your deck and then draw a card for each card in your opponent's hand. If your opponent gets a little greedy and you don't have the pieces that you need, you could use this to just like refresh your hand entirely and get you a whole bunch of cards if your opponent has a lot. Now, there's going to be times where your opponent has a small hand and this is useless, or you're going to just draw into cards you don't want. But I think the possibility of refreshing your hand, especially for a setup heavy deck, this could be worth it. Leaf is a supporter card that reduces retreat cost by 2. Now, this doesn't just straight up replace X speed. The big trade-off here is that Leaf is your supporter, and now you can't play Research or Sabrina or anything like that, but there will be decks that want to play either just Leaf or a combination of Leaf and X Speed. In particular, if you're playing a deck that has some really bulky Pokemon with high retreat costs, Leaf is going to be a way that makes pivoting those Pokemon a lot more realistic. Blue gives decks a new defensive option where on your opponent's next turn, their attacks will do 10 less damage. It's going to be on a case-by-case basis which decks really want the minus 10 damage, but there will be decks here and there where that 10 damage is going to matter, and if the deck you're playing is one of those, then yeah, maybe adding a blue could be worth it. Mythical Slab probably makes Psychic decks even better. You get to look at the top card of your deck. If that card is a Psychic Pokemon, you get to put that in your hand, and if it's not a Psychic Pokemon, you put it to the bottom of your deck. Theoretically, yes, there could be some risk in putting another good card you need to the bottom of your deck, but in Psychic decks as they're constructed right now, in particular if you're playing Mewtwo with the Gardevoir, being able to find those Psychic Pokemon is such an important aspect of the deck that I think Mythical Slab is going to be a staple in those decks, and giving you an opportunity to find Pokemon that aren't just basics with Pokeball make this awesome. Mythical Island is an awesome mini set. I'm really surprised at how much in the way of game-changing cards we're getting here. I actually stayed up till like 4 o'clock in the morning last night when the set dropped in my neck of the woods. I was playing all the single player content, trying to grind for pack hourglasses and shop tickets, and opening as many packs as I can so that I can get all of these cards in my collection and play them and hopefully make some more content on Pokemon TCG Pocket with these new cards. What do you think of the set? Which ones are you excited for? Did I miss anything that you think is important, or did I undersell something that maybe you think is going to have a bigger impact than I'm leading on? Let me know in the comments below. But for now, I gotta get going. Thank you so much for watching. You can find me on all the things: YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram at InThirdPerson. You can find me on Twitch at InThirdPerson, where I stream the Pokemon trading card game every Sunday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. And check out the website InThirdPerson.com for more articles and videos on video games, board games, and other nerdy pursuits. So until the next one, I'll see you later. Bye-bye.